Hey guys, Flamingo here, bringing you my detailed class guide for the newly revealed Virtuoso. So in this video we're going to be looking at the new and exclusive weapon for the Virtuoso and the individual weapon skills. We'll then be looking at the healing, utility and elite skills you can use. We'll be looking at how the Virtuoso changes the Mesmer base profession mechanics, and then we'll be looking at the traits and specialization, as well as giving a combat demonstration at the end just to see how it all comes together. So if you're interested in playing as a Virtuoso, or if you already are and you want to know more, strap in and we'll get started right now. Alright, so before we get started, I just want to give you a quick profession overview for the Virtuoso. So the Virtuoso is the third elite specialization for the Mesmer in Guild Wars 2, and it's unlocked in the End of Dragons expansion. The Virtuoso sharpens the power of their mind into deadly psionic blades. Unlike traditional Mesmer illusions, they wield these directly as magic projectiles. So by being a Virtuoso, you're going to get a new weapon as always. So you're going to get the main hand dagger, which is going to give us a few new weapon skills to look at. We've got a new set of psionic abilities, which have really awesome animations, really cool effects. I'm going to be going through all of them. The actual profession mechanics of the Mesmer change completely. You're actually not going to have illusions anymore. You're going to have these blades instead that you see floating above my head. And we're going to be able to build those up and use those to attack the enemies. So lots of stuff to get into. Really awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right now with the weapon skills. Okay, so now I want to have a look at the exclusive new weapon for the Virtuoso, and this is the main hand dagger. So it's obviously going to give us 3 new weapon skills to look at, and I'm going to look at each of those one by one, read through what they do, and then I'll obviously demonstrate them for you guys. Okay, so our number 1 on the main hand dagger is called Flying Cutter. This is send a blade of energy at your target. Hitting the same target multiple times invokes a flurry of blades on your target. So obviously one thing to clarify, this is actually a ranged weapon, the dagger for the Mesmer, which is pretty cool, much like, you know, they've got the greatsword and things like that, which are normally melee weapons, but they've made them ranged, so it's pretty cool. So you're like throwing illusionary daggers and stuff like that is sort of the idea. So Flying Cutter, you see it's got 1200 range, so from very long range. It can hit up to 5 targets. And if it hits the same target 3 times, it's going to cause a flurry. So rather than having like a traditional, sequence ability where obviously you're going to like a chain ability where you're going to have 1, 2, 3 different skills that you have to do at once, it's got this flurry effect instead. So as long as you can hit this auto attack 3 times on the same target, it's going to flurry and just do that extra damage. So try and let it hit 3 times if you're going to be using your number 1 skill, as obviously it's going to greatly increase the amount of damage you do. So let's have a quick look at this then. So bam, 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 and you can see there's a flurry there on the 3rd hit, as you can see. Pretty cool there, stacking some vulnerability on the enemy, and obviously it's cool that you can do it from quite far away, and you can see it can actually hit multiple enemies as well, I believe. So if I you see if I'm hitting this guy, it goes through and it hits both of them. So nice skill there, really good number 1 actually. I quite like that. I quite like the feel of the ranged dagger as well. It's pretty cool. And our number 2 skill on the dagger is Blade Call. And this has a 5-second cooldown. So throw a fan of daggers that return to you. Stock a blade if this attack hits at least 1 target. Okay, so this is going to be, so once again it's 1200 range, but it's a fan of blades. You're going to throw 3 daggers, hit up to 5 enemies, and if you hit at least 1 target, which you'd hope you'd hit at least 1 target with this skill, otherwise it's a complete waste of time, you're going to stock a dagger, which is one of these here, which replaces your normal illusions. So it's going to, that's, you know, we'll go into that in more detail when we speak about the profession mechanics, but that's going to be something that you're really going to want to do, so that's obviously going to have a good effect. So let's try this out here. So you see a fan of daggers there, and it would stack another blade up here if we didn't already have 5. So let's just demonstrate. Boom. You can see it's sort of like a fan of 3 daggers, and you can see it hits the enemies and then comes back and grants you a dagger up here as well. So that's really cool. And then our 3rd and final weapon skill is Unstable Blade Storm, which has a 12-second cooldown. So launch a slow-moving telekinetic storm of daggers that damages foes it passes through. With each interval, the blade storm will fire blades at nearby enemies. Okay, so this is going to move. It can be done from quite long range. It's going to pass through enemies. It's going to do damage to them. Each interval, which is every second and a half, it will fire blades at nearby enemies. So it will launch 3 blades to hit up to 5 targets. This is a pretty cool looking skill. So let me see if I can sort of line this one up to, if I target this guy, if I can sort of shoot it and it through them and see if it can affect them. So look, really cool. There you go. You can see it hit. Yeah, so it's shooting out blades to everyone around it. So that's a really cool for a weapon skill there. Number 3. It feels more like maybe like a utility skill or something like that. But that's really cool. So you're going to shoot that out. There you go. And you can see it literally shooting blades out at everyone that it goes past. So it's going to be a really cool skill to sort of shoot into a a big group of enemies and just start shooting blades out in all directions. I mean, not to mention it does look really cool as well. I know obviously the important thing is that it's effective, the skills and stuff, but I would say that the skills on the Virtuoso do look awesome. So it's just something to get you a little bit more excited about it. So that is all of the new weapon skills. So now we're going to have a look at the new healing skill. Alright, so now it's time to look at the new and exclusive healing skill for the Virtuoso. So this skill is Twin Blade Restoration and has a 30-second cooldown. So this is our first look at one of the psionic abilities, which is obviously a completely new skill type. So heal yourself and throw 2 blades at your target. If the first blade hits, you lose conditions. If the second blade hits, you gain Aegis and 1 additional random boon. So obviously we get a nice big chunk heal from this, as we'd expect. 30-second cooldown, so not too quick, but it's okay. So it's a decent sized heal. But also you're going to throw out a couple of blades, which will do a bit of damage. But the main thing is that the first one is going to make you lose condition. So you can see you remove a condition there, target up to 1 person. And then the second one means that you gain Aegis, which means you're going to block the next attack. And you get 1 additional random boon, be it regen, swiftness or vigor by the look of it. So it's good here. So it's like a traditional heal, but with a bit of a little twist on it, a Virtuoso twist with like throw-in blades, which obviously links in with pretty much all of the skills. So you can use it as just a standard healing ability, and I feel like this might be quite a good one. But also we've got some nice positive effects we can put on ourselves as well. So if I use it, so what is it? Yes, so the range is 1200 like most of the skills. So I'll heal myself. Boom, nice animation there, and it threw the 2 blades there, which obviously, like I said, is giving us vigor, as well as it would have removed a condition if we had one as well. So I think that's a really cool healing skill there as well. It's going to do a good amount of healing. It's not like one of these skills where they put so many other effects on it. It barely actually does what it's supposed to. It does give you that big heal, but it's good to have some other positive effects with it as well, like removing conditions and gaining boons. So I think that is a good healing skill there. Obviously try and use it when you're near enemies, because throwing out those blades does do a bit of damage and give you these extra effects. So so do bear that in mind. But 1200 range, you would have thought if you're using a healing skill, you're pretty much always going to have an enemy within 1200 range anyway, because that's why you're using this skill. Alright, so that's the new healing skill. So now I want to have a look at the new utility skills. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the new and exclusive utility skills for the Virtuoso. And these are all our psionic abilities, so let's have a look. So like with any elite spec, we've got a whole new row of elite skills here, utility skills. So we've got 4 to choose from. I've got 3 here, I'll try those out and then switch out for the other one. So we've got some really cool effects here and some good damage and awesome animations to go through. So our first one is Psychic Force, and this has a 45-second cooldown. So knock back nearby foes with a psychic blade and gain boons. So this one you're going to do when you're relatively close to an enemy. It's going to break stun. It's going to attack. It's going to affect enemies in a radius of 300 around you. It's going to knock them back for 450, and it's going to give you Fury and Might. It's also going to do a little bit of damage as well. But yeah, so it's pretty good crowd control ability there. Obviously, if you're surrounded by enemies, we're going to use this now, and it's going to go boom. It's going to knock back these enemies. It's going to damage them, and you can see we've got Fury and Might as well, which is obviously if you're doing like a power build or something like that, That's obviously exactly what we're going to want to increase our damage. So that's a pretty good utility skill to have on your bar there. Nice effect as well. And next up we've got Rain of Swords, and this has a 25-second cooldown. So create a storm of blades that attacks a large area, damaging and applying vulnerability to targets. So this is a really nice skill. So this is the ground target ability. You can do it from 1200 range, but it has a radius of 240. It's going to pulse 5 times with an interval of 1 second, damaging all the enemies it rains down on, as well as inflicting vulnerability, which means they're going to be taking even more damage as well. So this is a really cool ability that you want to see. So I can do it from quite far away, like I said, and you just place it on whoever you want. So I'm going to stick it here, and literally exactly what you would want it to look like. Purple blades raining down from the sky, loads of stacks of vulnerability are built up there. Obviously it's going to attack up to 5 targets in that area as well. So if they're all stacked together, you're just going to dump this on top of their head, and it's going to do a ton of damage, as well as, you know, stacking vulnerability for days as well. So that's definitely one of the skills that you're going to want to be utilising, I would expect. And then next up we've got Blade Renewal, and this has a 60-second cooldown. So this is channel to gain distortion and stock up to the maximum number of blades. So it's going to take 3 seconds to channel it, and in those 3 seconds you get distortion, which means you're immune to conditions and damage, so you're like invincible for 3 seconds, which is really awesome. But the main point of it is that you're going to create 5 blades, which is like your new illusions. Like I said, I'm going to go into more detail on this in the professional mechanics part of the video. But for example, obviously if you don't have any blades here, let me just get rid of them real quick. There you go. You didn't see that. I'm going to show that off later on. So now we've got no blades here, or no illusions. So if we want to use Blade Renewal, get this distortion, we can see bang, 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 and you can see it down there, but obviously you can physically see it above your head. Suddenly you've got 5 blades again, so you can whack out your like shatter abilities and whatnot straight away again. So this is going to be a really important skill when used and timed correctly, being able to get you to sort of like double the damage of your blades just by bringing them back really quickly. It does have a 60-second cooldown, obviously, so that's something to bear in mind. You know, it does take a while, but I think you're probably going to, you know, if you're using your blades for a lot of damage and stuff, this is likely something that you're going to want to keep on your bar. So yep, so we're going to quickly swap out the other utility as well after we've tried out those 3. So we just want to grab our 4th one. So let me just get out of combat so that I can change that over. Okay, so our 4th one is Sword of Decimation. So that's a really cool name, so let's try this out. So this has a 25-second cooldown. So drop a massive blade on a location, immobilizing enemies. This attack deals increased damage against controlled and downed foes. So another ground target ability. Instead of a shower of blades, it's going to be one massive blade. You're going to immobilize enemies for up to sort of 3 seconds, which is great. You can do it from 1200 range. The radius that you can use is 240. It's going to affect up to 5 targets. And if the enemy is controlled or downed, and it says they're controlled, so like stunned, dazed, knocked back, all those things there, then it's actually going to have a damage increase of 100%, so it's going to do double the damage. So obviously try and find an ability that has one of those effects that you can sort of pair this with, so you can double the damage, because why wouldn't you want to do that? So let's quickly try this out now. So let's put this on this guy's head. Sorry, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I meant to press 8. So yeah, there you go, so number 8. So if I, this guy here, so bang, there you go, massive blade comes down. You can see immobilized for a decent amount of time there as well, so you're obviously able to dump a bunch of other attacks on them while they're immobilized. Bear in mind, it does affect up to 5 targets as well, so you can immobilize up to 5 people, which is really cool. So if you have a group of things there, a group of enemies, you just dump that on their head and you're going to be immobilize all of them, which is really awesome. So that is all of the new utility skills for the Virtuoso. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is the new elite skill. Okay, so now the time has come to have a look at the new and exclusive elite skill for the Virtuoso. So this is our elite psionic ability, and it's called 1000 Cuts, which has a 60-second cooldown. So open a portal that devastates targets in a line in front of you with a flurry of blades. So it's a little bit like the the Rain of Swords one here, but instead it's going to create a portal that's horizontal rather than vertical and shoot these blades out towards an enemy. And obviously you'd hope it'd do a little bit more damage as well, as it's an elite skill. So it lasts for 3 seconds. You can do it from 1200 range, and it's going to hit up to 5 targets. So I'll try and sort of line a couple of these guys up to get a maximum effect of this ability. So I'm going to be obviously place it down where I want, and it's going to shoot out. So I think it's a directional one as well. So let me just try and get into play here. Line these up. So if you can see I'm directing where I want these blades to shoot. So obviously you do need to be careful with this one that they don't sort of move out of the way and then it becomes useless. So I can just use this now. So bam, and you can see it's shooting blades out of there, and this guy's dead, and this guy's done a decent amount of damage with some stacks of vulnerability. So obviously it's something that you can do. You need to obviously time it and aim it correctly, so you need to do it when you've got some enemies in a line, but it should be a pretty effective skill if you can obviously find the best time to use it. It's got a minute cooldown, which means that you're sort of not going to be spamming it all the time, but it's not too long. It's not like a couple of minutes, so you'll obviously be able to use it fairly often, you know, wherever you're in combat and fighting some decent tough enemies. And it's going to hit up to 5 people, so hopefully if you get that in the right place, it's going to be spreading a ton of damage between the enemies, which is really cool. So that's everything for the new elite skill. So now we're going to have a look at the new profession mechanics for the Virtuoso. Alright, so now it's time to look at the new profession mechanics for the Virtuoso, and this is obviously where the Mesmer has changed the most with this elite spec. So I've touched on it briefly, but I'll go into it now. Obviously normally you've got your illusions along here, and you can have 3 at any one time, and they fill up, and then obviously you shatter them. I mean, it follows a similar premise, but it is fairly different. So although it says illusions here, so these are 5 illusions, and these are your blades, and you can see these physically floating above your head. And you saw that quite a lot of your skills, they link in with it, and they might produce a blade for you to be able to use. So while you're in combat, I think normally the skills you're going to use that would normally, you know, give you clones and stuff like that, instead of that, they're going to leave you with daggers. So I think your normal phantasm abilities and stuff like that, you'll be able to use as normal. They'll have their phantasm skill as normal, but instead of leaving behind a clone, they will leave behind a dagger for you to use in these skills here, these blade song abilities, which we'll go through now. So blade song abilities are going to be replacing your shatters, and they're going to basically, it's a way of spending the blades that you've built up to do damage or have a particular effect. And there's 4 different ones to choose from, very much like the shatters. You know, they're going to use all of them, and the more you've got, the more you've built up between 1 and 5, the more damage or the more effect they're going to have. So let's have a look at our first one. Obviously we've got 5 blades to start with here above our head, and I'll try and demonstrate them all like that so we can see sort of like the maximum effect. And the first blade song ability is Blade Song Harmony, and this has a 12-second cooldown. So fire all stocked blades at your target. So this is like the normal F1 on the Mesmer. It's going to be, you know, the maximum amount of damage. It's just focused on doing damage and no other effects. So you can do it from 1200 range, hits up to 5 targets, and it's going to be doing a fair amount of damage. So let's try this out. So this is probably going to be your go-to on like a power build. So we can use all 5 of our blades. So bam. Ooh. So really cool animation there as well. It sort of like spins around and builds them up and then just shoots them out. And you can see all of them hitting them one by one, doing a decent amount of damage. And like I said, if the enemies like crowded together, it's going to hit up to 5 targets as well. So what I'll do is I'll use Blade Renewal, which is one of the utility skills that we looked at obviously, and this is pretty cool because it brings back all 5 blades all at once. So now we can demonstrate the next one. So we've got Blade Song Sorrow, and this has a 25-second cooldown. So fire a volley of blades inflicting your target with conditions. So this is obviously similar to F1, but more of a Condi thing. So it's going to be doing damage, but it's also going to stack confusion on the enemy as well, which is going to be do a bit of damage over time and cause them to take even more damage when they use a skill. So once again, 1200 range. It can hit up to 5 targets, so pretty much exactly the same as the last one, but obviously we're going to be putting some conditions as well. So let's try this one out. So, oh nice. Really cool there. We had stacks of confusion, a bit of vulnerability as well. As you can see, that is a really awesome ability there. You can see it sort of like comes up with all these portals and shoots out the blades. That's really cool there. So I'll just use the blade renewal real quick so I can bring back the blades for our F3. Okay, so Blade Song Dissonance is our third one here, and this has a 38-second cooldown. So combine all your blades into one large blade that dazes targets based on the number of blades consumed. Alright, so this is going to shoot one big blade rather than loads of little ones, but obviously the more blades you've got, 1 to 5, it's going to combine those blades to create a bigger one, which is going to daze the enemy for a longer amount of time. So it hits only one target, and it can be done from 1200 range, and you get half a second of daze per blade. So if you've got one blade, it's only going to be half a second, but obviously it's going to be 2.5 seconds if you've got all 5 of your blades like I do here. So that's a decent length on the daze there, and obviously of course it's going to do a chunk of damage as well. But obviously the main one on this is obviously the fact that it's going to be dazing the enemy. So let's try it out on this guy. So okay, there you see that daze lasting quite a long time there. These effects are so cool as well, like these animations. Like, you're just going to want to spam these all the time, but obviously you're going to need to build your blade up first, like a reward for using it. But the animations on the Virtuoso, compared to the other elite specs that we've obviously seen so far, definitely second to none. So that's really cool. It's what we'd expect from the Mesmer as well. And our final blade song ability here, our F4, is Blade Turn Requiem, and this has a 30-second cooldown. So block incoming attacks and send your blades spinning around you to hit nearby foes. Spinning blade duration scales with number of blades consumed. Okay, so this one's more of a defensive thing. So we're going to block incoming attacks for 3 seconds, so 3-second block duration. And then we're going to send blades spinning around to hit nearby foes. That's going to hit up to 5 targets in a radius of 240. So this one is, you know, if you're going to be close to the enemy, this is going to affect the enemies around you rather than doing it from a range. So it's going to affect them on a radius of 240 around you, block for 3 seconds, and then it's going to hit those nearby foes. Spinning blade duration scales with the number of blades consumed. So obviously the amount of time the blades spin and do damage for will obviously depend on the amount of blades you've got. So the maximum being 5, which we've got. So let's see this in action. So if I use this, we can see spinning around here, and they move with me, and I can move around, damaging enemies. A really cool animation there. So you see the spinning blades on you. Obviously if you've got 5 blades built up, that's going to do it's going to last for the maximum amount of time. So you can use the rest of your abilities doing more damage while just by being near the enemies it's doing damage. Obviously you might want to pair that with like more of like your melee weapon or something like that, because this is a ranged weapon, so you might not be that close to the enemy, but just make sure you utilize that. If you do utilize that F4, it's because you're quite close to the enemy as well. So that is all of our new profession mechanics for the Virtuoso, which is really cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at the specialization and traits. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the elite specialization and the individual traits within it. So if we go to our specs here, obviously as it's an elite spec, it's going to take up your 3rd slot. So obviously once you've unlocked the Virtuoso here, just by having this on your bar, you're going to get the dagger proficiency, which means that you can obviously wield the dagger in your main hand. So that's pretty cool. And then our first passive here is just the stuff we've already been through really. So Psychic Blade, so whenever a clone would be summoned, you instead stock a blade. Blades persist indefinitely until used. Your shatters are replaced with blade songs that consume your stocked blades, but still count as shatters for the purposes of core traits. So that's obviously something that's quite important to bear in mind. And there obviously it just gives you a detail. So this basically gives us our new F1 to F4 abilities. In terms of the choices, the first one we've got is Blade Turn Refrain. So blade songs grant Aegis. So blade song abilities, which obviously are your F1 to F4 abilities. So whenever you use them, you're going to grant Aegis, which means you're going to block the next incoming attack. So that's a good defensive ability there, just making those blade songs even better. Your second one is Mental Focus, which is strike damage is increased against foes within the range threshold. So anyone within a range of 600 means that your strike damage is increased by 7%. So this can be quite effective ability for, you know, power builds that are using melee weapons like the swords or something like that. So that could be quite an effective one for your build. And you've got Jagged Mind. So blade attacks have a chance to inflict bleeding on critical hits. So chance on critical hits, so 100% chance on critical hit to inflict bleeding. So that's your blade attacks, and that's all these ones that say blade here. Obviously there's quite a few of them. So that's really cool as well. So you'll be putting bleeding on the enemy. Next passive here, you've got Deadly Blades. So blades inflict vulnerability on critical hits. So 1%. So obviously vulnerability there. So whenever you use blades, you're going to be inflicting vulnerability on critical hits, and obviously if you've got a power build or something like that, you might have quite a high crit chance, so that should be quite often, just inflicting vulnerability with these blade skills. And then you've got Duelist's Reversal. So blocking or dodging an attack grants boons. So whenever you block, or if you're dodging around, then you're going to grant yourself boons if you dodge an attack. So quickness and fury, so some good boons as well. So fury increasing your critical chance, quickness meaning that your skills and actions are faster for a couple of seconds. So that's just an incentive to block and dodge. And then you've got Phantasmal Blades. So phantasms that successfully complete their attack launch a blade at their target and grant you fury when they expire. So obviously, you're still using phantasms as usual. Whenever they complete their attack, shoot a blade. So it's going to grant fury. So phantasmal blade. So shoot a blade at the phantasm's current target, which is going to do damage and grant you fury as well. So just buffing your phantasms. And you've got Sharpening Sorrow. So gain fury when you activate Blade Song Sorrow. Fury increases your expertise. So obviously Blade Song Sorrow is your F2 here. So whenever you activate that, you're going to be giving yourself fury, and then obviously fury, it's saying increases your expertise as well. And then your final passive here is Quiet Intensity. So fury gives an increased critical hit chance. Gain ferocity based on your vitality. So obviously a lot of the things we've been through grant you fury, but this just says whenever you have fury, your critical hit chance is increased by 30%. So that's quite a big buff as well there to your critical hit chance, especially if you have fury up on yourself quite a lot. And then you're going to gain ferocity based on your vitality. So ferocity based on 10% of your vitality, that obviously means that's going to increase your critical hit damage even more. So it's sounding good, pretty good here for a power build as well, with a lot of crit damage. And for our last choices here, we've got Psychic Riposte, which is blocking or dodging an attack, stocks a blade, and shoots a blade at your attacker. So it's just an extra way to stock up your blades here. So blocking and dodging obviously just does that, as well as Riposting Blade, which is that you shoot a blade at your target, so a little bit of extra damage. Next up, we've got Infinite Forge, which is automatically stock blades while below the minimum blade count. So the minimum blade count is 3. So this means while you're in combat, if your blades are 3 or less, then you're going to be stocking blades automatically, which is great. So you'll always have some available. So that could be one that's really good if you're using those blade song abilities a lot. And then our final one here is Blood Song. So bleeding you apply deals increased damage. Stock a blade after applying enough stacks of bleeding to foes. So this one could be a good one for a condition build here. So just obviously increasing the effect of bleeding. I mean that you stock an extra blade after enough stacks. So once you've reached 5 bleeding stacks, you're going to increase that. And obviously bleeding you apply deals an extra 25% damage. So that is all of the traits within the specialization there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave you just with a combat demonstration, which I'll just show off all of these new skills just so you can see how they work in combat. But other than that, thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe to be kept up to date, and I will see you later.
No escape. Chop them in two. Not happening. Another.